Update. My 15 female sister's husband, 23 female/34 male, got me a Christmas gift I don't feel comfortable accepting. Original post. Hi, I'm 15 female, my sister is 23, her husband is 34. On Saturday we did our gifts exchange, and my sister and her husband got me a handbag, and they spent about the same amount of money, about $100, and all of my siblings, one older and 3 younger brothers, 18, 13, 10, and 6. After we were done giving gifts, my brother-in-law came into my room and gave me a separate gift. He said that he noticed I get overlooked a lot and thought I'd appreciate an extra gift. When I opened it, it was a Cartier bracelet. I told him thank you, but I felt weird accepting it. I have 2 from the same place from my grandmother, and I know they're not cheap. I feel like this is too much money to spend on me and not my brother's, but he just told me to keep it on a down low for everyone else, so my brothers don't get pissed, and that the money isn't a problem and I should just enjoy it. I don't know if it's rude to go to him tomorrow and give it back, and tell him I don't feel comfortable accepting a gift that's worth that much money. Now for the top advice before reading the update. Definitely need to know whether your sister knows. Why wasn't she there with him when he gave it to you? No, it was just him and me. I don't think she knows because he didn't give it to me with her. Thank her for the lovely gift and tell her you love it and that she's a great sister. Easiest way to deal with that. You need to tell your sister. Creating secrets that are just between the 2 of you is kind of sliding too close to grooming behavior. This dude already has a major age gap relationship with the older sister, and now is paying special attention to the 15-year-old? Weird, creepy, and absolutely grooming. Tell your sister, and a trusted adult. How old was your sister when they started going out? This really seems like grooming, not just the gift itself, but especially the way he's setting himself up as your hero, making an extra effort with you and casting the rest of your family as neglectful of you. And now for the update. So my sister didn't know about the gift. I told my mom, who got mad, because she said it was too much money, and it wasn't fair that I got an extra gift. So she called my sister and flipped out because I guess he didn't get her a gift that expensive. So she told me I had to give it back. Then she had a fight with her husband about it, and he ended up lying and saying I asked him to get me the bracelet, and that I had been bugging him for months about it. I don't know why I would do this when I literally already have so much jewelry and barely wear any of it, and basically lied and twisted the whole story to make me look like a spoiled brat. So now my mom and sister are both mad at me and called me spoiled. But I don't care. I'm glad I don't have the gift anymore. It's weird, not the actual gift. The bracelet was really nice, but everything else. He's acting really weird. I was hoping he wouldn't talk to me at all, but he was at my parents' New Year's Eve party last night, and he just made a lot of weird eye contact. But I'm still glad I did it. This dude is totally weird. Definitely stay away from him. And if you had been bugging him, where's the proof? Texts? Calls? This OP. Tell them to prove to them you've been calling and texting. He's a groomer. Always keep your door locked when they are staying over. If you don't have it, ask your dad to install one. I would argue, go stay the night at a friend's house any time he is over. Make a point to make it known to everyone in your circle what is going on. Friends, their parents, grandparents, be loud about it. I'm so sorry your mom is not protecting you. I can see your sister not wanting to believe her husband is this terrible, but your mom? There is absolutely no excuse for that. So, seek help outside of your mom and sister, and just do what you need to do to stay safe, OP. I can't believe your mom and sister are believing him over you. Is he wealthy? I have no doubt that your brother-in-law is into young women. He's currently dating someone too young for him, while also trying to creep on her teenage sister. He's gross, and it's disturbing that your mom and sister are turning a blind eye. I hate it when women encourage this type of gross behavior by men. Yes, he has a lot of money. I think it's all weird too. You need to go back and tell your mother. Of course you wouldn't believe me because I lied, but I bet you he can't show one text or phone call or anything. And if you think about it, considering that I don't even wear jewelry, why would I ask for it? And if I ask for it, why would I tell you I thought it was strange? I hope nothing bad happens to me, but if it does, you can look back at this moment and realize that you prioritize your daughter's marriage over your other daughter's safety. He gave me the gift because he's giving me inappropriate attention and telling me that I get overlooked and needed something special. As far as I'm concerned, is grooming. I don't forgive you for the way you're treating me, so maybe do your job as a mom and don't treat me like I did something wrong when I didn't. Do you have a dad? Can you tell your grandma? Did you tell your mom about anything else that he did? If he crosses any more boundaries, it sounds like you're on your own to tell him. I don't care as people believe your lies. I want you to stay away from me. Because he's wealthy, it seems like he's being treated like a family asset, and they don't want to mess up your sister's relationship. I bet your sister knows the truth in her heart. Just stay strong. Reach out to anyone who you think you can support you, like aunts or uncles or the moms of some of your close friends. If you were invited anywhere by him or where you would be in their house alone, you should decline. And anytime you're going to be alone with him, you should be running your phone work recorder. So sorry you weren't believed. You would have been better off throwing it in the trash. I mean, why would he buy me a gift more expensive than he bought my sister and then claimed that I bugged him for it? He's a 35-year-old man, and he can't say no if I supposedly ask, which I didn't. Next story is titled, Update. I, 27 female, screamed at my husband's 29 male neurodivergent sister, 20 female, and now I don't know how to repair our relationship. Background. My husband and I have been together for 4 years and married for 2. We both come from another country than the one we lived in when we met. Most of our relationships occurred while we were separated from our families. I knew he has a neurodivergent sister, but I hardly ever got a chance to interact with her. Sensitivity to neurodivergent is absent in our country, and very little to no awareness or guidance is provided to families with or without neurodivergent children. I got pregnant with twins earlier this year. We both decided to move back home for the birth and initial few years of our kids' lives, so we could be around family. We live in a house on our own, but my family's close by. I gave birth in the last week of October and I might be dealing with postpartum depression. I also have an increased sensitivity to sounds and smell as well as increased irritability. Ironically, my twins seem to be gifted with the strongest pair of lungs I have ever seen on newborns, and they like to demonstrate their lung capacity every few hours. My poor husband usually is the one to handle the babies and will usually pass them on to me once he has them a little quietened. I have not left the house since birth. Complications from birth plus fear of COVID. Now to the issue at hand. Recently, we received news of my husband's aunt's passing. His entire family had to attend a pre-funeral and funeral rituals. They were all devastated, and understandably so. However, they were unable to find a trained professional at the last minute to take care of his sister. I've barely spent time with his sister, and from what I know, she's severely dependent on care. She is high-functioning but has difficulty with emotional outbursts that can be quite violent. She also has extreme sensitivity to sounds. In the heat of the moment and in panic, my husband's family decided since I would be home anyway and not attending the funeral, that I could also look after his sister. I know they were in the wrong. I even begged my husband, but he was already distraught and asked me to help out the family in a time of need. All I was handed was a list and schedule of her medications, as well as a list of allergies and food preferences. I was not prepared for this. Things started going wrong immediately. They were not able to sit her down and explain why she was being removed from her home and being placed in our home for the day. She was not explained why her primary caretaker, mother-in-law, was not going to be there for her, and she was not given any time to adjust. Instead, she was just thrust into a messy and noisy, dark house with loud crying twins and an old cat she hates. She immediately did not trust me because of this. I tried explaining things to her as well as I could. My husband had warned me that she can get physically violent, but I did not expect her to do things like pinch, spit, or shove me. She had 2 minor outbursts within the first couple of hours itself. But then came the major one. I was already swamped with the twins that had a massive headache because of their loud crying. I was struggling to feed them and change them and settle them, during which sister-in-law also needed her meal. I was trying to soothe one baby while also meal prep, but the crying of the babies triggered a major meltdown. While I was trying to manage her, I had put the kids in their bassinet. She held onto my head, pulled my face towards her, and screamed directly into my ear with all her might. Felt like I might pass out. I shoved her and she fell backwards. I managed to gather my thoughts, but it felt like my head was going to split open. I saw her on the floor and immediately felt guilty. I I really did, but nothing seemed to work. I called mother-in-law and asked her to come home and explain what had happened. She had lost her sister, but she understood and told me she was on the way, but it would take her nearly an hour to reach. She asked me to give sister-in-law space and keep the kids away from her so as to not trigger her further. When I came out, sister-in-law was not on the floor where I had last seen her. So I went to check the only other room in the house and then the kitchen. What I saw made my blood boil. She had trashed the entire room. We were setting it up as the nursery, and she had smeared what I can only explain to be feces on the walls. Cat/baby or human, jury's still out. I don't know if I even want to know. There was what I presumed to be water all over the floor as well as some glass. She was sitting in one corner of the room rocking back and forth. I walked over to her to try and apologize or even speak to her to make sure she was okay and had not sustained any cuts or injuries. She shoved me hard, and I slipped and fell into some of the glass behind me. A piece sliced through my arm, and I don't know, I lost it. I just started crying and walked away. She followed me, screaming loudly and saying awful words. I know I should have known better. I know she might not know better. But at that moment, I did not care. I screamed at her. I yelled at her and I just could not stop myself. Shortly after, my husband and mother-in-law walked into the house. I told them what had happened, and I apologized over and over again. However, the husband looked broken. He looked at me as if I was a monster. He told me he did not trust me anymore and felt like he did not know me. He called me petty and self-obsessed for fighting with his sister despite knowing of her disability. He told me he could not trust me to be home alone with the children. At that moment, I felt so much guilt and shame that I did not even try to defend myself. Mother-in-law helped clean up the floor, and sister-in-law and my husband grabbed our kids and left. My parents were called and have been staying with me in the house since. My husband is barely speaking to me and says he needs space to figure things out. The children are back with me, but it is as if everyone around me is waiting for the other shoe to drop it for me too. I don't know, lash out or something. I had scheduled therapy soon and have been asking my husband to come with me. He is not ready yet and says he feels like he does not even know me anymore and feels disgusted to even be in my presence knowing how I interacted with his sister. I don't know what to do. How do I proceed? Is there any hope? I know I messed up, but I love him and I don't want to lose him. I've checked up on mother-in-law and sister-in-law is all but forgotten about what had happened, and mother-in-law is just distraught overall. Now for the top advice before reading the update. Ask him how would he feel if she's knocked you out or knocked you down, and then got a hold of the babies. He and his mother are dumbasses for leaving you and his sister like that. I really wonder how he would feel if sister-in-law hurt the babies on accident or something. I would be willing to bet that he would still find a way to blame Opie though. I think that if you keep apologizing, you will give your husband the impression that what he and his family did is okay. They left a woman with special needs in a situation where she was confused, unable to cope without a qualified caretaker, and in a position to harm herself and others, including babies. They were grossly irresponsible and did so much harm. I'm so sorry they did this to you, and to your husband's poor sister who did not deserve to be abandoned by them in that situation. By you apologizing to them, you are continuing to enable them in thinking that what they did was acceptable, when what they did was devastating, harmful, and abusive. To your husband's sister that he pretends to care about, to you that he isn't even pretending to care about, and your babies that your husband is overlooking, you could have been harmed or killed in that situation in the chaos. And now for the update. It's been a while since my original post and I had a short update. A lot has happened and I barely remember much. Mommy brain and sleep deprivation is very real. As recommended, I did send my husband screenshots of some of the comments on my previous post as well as the entire post. My parents are staying with me to help with the twins, so that has been a major help. Mother-in-law and I spoke endlessly about sister-in-law and how to proceed from there. I even admitted that my husband's behavior was making me rethink the marriage in the first place. We spoke about the attempt to have sister-in-law become our responsibility, and also how it might be more helpful to find an assisted living facility for her, and that I volunteered to pay some amount to contribute towards it. Mother-in-law refused to accept the money, but is very up to the idea of the assisted living facility. Later that week, husband was back at the house and asked me to go for a drive with him so we could talk as my parents were in the house and we needed to be able to talk alone. He gave me the space to talk first and tell him what happened and how I felt and how his behavior made me feel. I told him I was considering judicial separation from him because I felt abandoned. It made to feel like a criminal for no real fault of mine. I also told him I find it hard to trust him around the twins when he was placing their security so low and considered so little about me. I told him his behavior was inexcusable, even though I was sympathetic for his position and his love for sister-in-law. I kept breaking down while talking as I struggled with confrontation, but he listened very patiently and kept comforting me and encouraging me to carry on without trying to object. He then told me aside. Apparently, sister-in-law had told him I had been neglecting her and had locked myself into the room to neglect her, and that I had hit her and thrown a glass full of water at her in a fit of rage. My guilty behavior when he came home added to him thinking she was correct, and for a moment he was not being rational. But later, mother-in-law and father-in-law ripped into him about sister-in-law's habit of lying. They had even told him exactly what all had happened as they heard from me, and basically gave him an earful which made him realize he messed up. I know it was not good enough, but over the next week we transitioned to him moving back home with us, and honestly, things have been great. He agreed to go to therapy, and I have had some individual sessions and one preliminary couple session. The holidays and COVID have been making a more frequent schedule difficult. He has been trying to make up for things. Yes, it will take longer for us to get through it, but I'm hoping we will in due time. We have a lot to figure out and a lot of details left to iron out, but we had a lifetime ahead of us for it. For now, I'm just grateful to have him home and us to be on the same page once again. I remember your first post. I think your mother-in-law and father-in-law are great people. I'm happy for you that your husband has come around. I just wonder why it took him so long. Was he embarrassed by his reaction? Or embarrassed for believing his sister when she lied to him? He initially left town for a weekend for work and went no contact with pretty much everyone except to text he was fine. After that, it was equal parts embarrassment as well as a bruised ego which took him under a week to get over and drop by. How can you lock yourself into a room to neglect someone? I know this isn't the point, but I'm glad things are working out well for you, but I needed to ask. By basically locking her out so she could not reach me if she was in an emergency. Ah, okay. I'm not sure why your husband would believe that, but I'm underestimating the level that emotion can inform an argument. My son has ASD, and is just learning to lie. It's not fun. I hope the improvement in communication for everyone in the family is helping. Admitting things aren't easy can make a huge difference in your everyday life, can't it? Update. Am I the a-hole for not going back to my wife after she threatened to call the cops on me? Original post. My wife and I recently welcomed our 6-month-old baby, and since my wife returned from the hospital, it feels like everything has changed drastically. Before this, we were the kind of couple you'd think had it all. Never argued, always happy, and just solid. But now, it's like the person I knew and loved is gone. Her anger and resentment toward me are so intense, I can practically feel it whenever I'm near her. I tried to brush it off, thinking it might just be the exhaustion and stress from having a newborn, but it only got worse. After months of tiptoeing around, I finally reached my limit. 2 days ago, it all exploded. We got into a terrible fight that quickly turned into a shouting match. I couldn't believe the things we were saying to each other. It was the worst fight we've ever had, and in the middle of it, she screamed that she'd call the police on me. That statement stopped me cold. I wasn't even yelling anymore. I was just standing there, stunned. I felt betrayed and heartbroken, like a stranger was standing in front of me, not the woman I'd married. When she finally stormed off to another room, I just sat there in silence, unable to process what had happened. I felt like I was backed into a corner. It hit me hard that this wasn't just some heated argument we'd look back on and laugh about later. This was something that could change my life in ways I couldn't imagine. I didn't want to be in a situation where I was at risk of having the police involved over a misunderstanding or an accusation. So I made a decision. I grabbed whatever I could think of, some clothes, my phone, and my keys, and left. Now I'm staying at a friend's place. He's been really supportive, but he says I'm just not myself these days. And he's right. I feel like a shell of the person I was. My wife, meanwhile, has been reaching out, saying she wants to talk. My mother-in-law even came over with my baby, asking me to hold her and see if that might help heal things. But I had to refuse. As much as it hurt to say no, I knew that if I held my daughter, I'd be tempted to go back home. And then what? Go back into a situation where a single argument could lead to a call to the cops? My mother-in-law is trying to mediate, making excuses for my wife. She's telling me that my wife didn't mean it, that it was just words said in the heat of the moment. But that's not something you can take lightly. I can't just forget that she threw that threat out there. It changes the entire foundation of trust we built over the years. My mind is constantly spinning, and a sense of loss weighs heavy on me. I lost my home, my wife, my child, and a life we built together all in one moment. People tell me to just talk it out with her, that maybe I'm overreacting. But how do you talk out something like this? How do you go back to normal after feeling betrayed like that? I'm dealing with depression on top of everything else, and I keep questioning if there's even a path forward for us. Is there a way to forgive and forget? Or has the trust really been shattered beyond repair? Now for the top comments before reading the update 25 days later. Can you explain why the threat of cops being called is an issue at all? Are there marks on her? Do you have warrants? You can't go to jail for having a verbal argument. Cops don't care if my kind has done anything bad, they just shoot. I don't have warrants, but I have had cops harassing me for hours for simply walking. I don't even remember why verbal arguments started, but it was a mix of everything wrong with me, my family, and other BS. Can I ask how your wife was radiating hatred? Did you talk to her about how you felt? Did she know you thought she hated you? What do you mean when you say you snapped? What does that entail exactly? Was there something specific you said or did that made your wife threaten to call the cops? Or did it just come out of nowhere? Did she say what she was gonna tell them when they got there? You said after tolerating a lot you snapped. What did she do that you were tolerating? Do you know anything about PPD or other postpartum conditions? Would you recognize the symptoms? I know that's a lot of questions, but I just feel like there's a lot of context missing here that could drastically change the story. Would you be asking the context if OP was a woman? Extreme personality change is a mental health emergency considering you have a helpless infant. Yes, PPD is real, and sickness and health are in the vows usually. It's her first baby, and she doesn't even realize it probably. And so what? If he does get falsely accused and ends up having his life ruined, at least he fulfilled his vows? This is insane. As somebody that has been arrested due to both a woman and laws in place, he will get screwed. My state has a mandatory arrest for a DV call. Dude will only make his life more difficult. I was in jail with a guy who called the cops on his wife for punching him, and he was in there with me. Now for the update. I did talk to her on the phone, and she can't seem to comprehend why I was so upset that she threatened to call the cops on me. It was like she couldn't wrap her head around the gravity of what she has done. She did apologize, but she still thinks I overreacted. As soon as I left, my eating disorder vanished. Then when I talked to her on the phone, the depression started settling again. I have filed for divorce. I have no clue what the divorce will look like, but one thing I know is that I will never feel safe with my wife again ever. Divorce is the right thing to do, for both of us. Don't talk to her on the phone or in person without a lawyer present. Text her or email her that all communication must be through a lawyer going forward. She was already ready to make up stories to the cops about you, which means she was full or ready to ruin your life. Don't give her the chance to make stuff up with no witnesses present to point out she's full of it. Get a voice recording app on your phone and make it easily accessible. She might try to contact you in person. Document everything. Basically, threatening to call the cops during an argument, especially when no one's getting hurt or in actual danger, is a really bad move. It's like using the police as a weapon, and it can have some seriously messed up consequences for the person on the receiving end of that threat. I'm really confused on why people are condoning divorce so quickly. Like, okay, I get it. If your wife has been threatening to call the cops on you on a regular basis, this is a fair reaction. But 6 months after giving birth with a drastic personality change, untreated PPD is a very real thing. Take some space sure to protect yourself. Document. But just jumping to divorce? Seems kinda a-holish to me. This update is 25 days later and nothing in the original post or the update suggests that the wife is doing anything to recognize it might be PPD and get it treated. If it were 2 days later, I might say bring it up and see how she reacts. But after almost a month? If she's still downplaying what she did and not mentioning working to get some sort of treatment, it suggests to me that either there's a conversation where OP mentioned it and his wife blew it off, and or that no one else in the wife's orbit has mentioned it. If OP's wife was coming from a place of, I did something really horrible, I haven't been myself, I need help, then maybe divorce isn't the only option. But if the writing is on the wall that he is going to have to fight uphill against his wife, and potentially a lot of people around her to get a PPD diagnosis and treatment to explain this, I don't blame him for walking away from that. And even if she was getting PPD treated, sometimes the betrayal that one partner does during a mental health crisis is too big to overcome. It can also be used as a tactic to minimize what she did. Like, you can't be mad at me for that, I had PPD. So a diagnosis is not always a solution in these cases. Not a-hole. Tell mother-in-law that her daughter needs counseling and perhaps medical treatment for PPD, and until that happens, you are in danger from her. You might also express the child might be in danger also, and try to get emergency custody for either yourself or your mother-in-law. Do not make any promises of reconciliation, and never be alone with your wife. I am sorry you are experiencing this, OP. I am also sorry for your wife, as she is obviously suffering some form of mental illness at the moment. However, you need to protect yourself first and foremost. See if the lawyer can file something with police as she keeps making threats, etc. Next story. Am I the a-hole for using my scared pregnant wife's cravings against her to drive her to the hospital during labor when she absolutely wouldn't? My wife and I have been together for 6 years, and a few months ago we welcomed our first child, a beautiful baby girl. However, the tension between us began on the day of our daughter's birth and hasn't let up since. In the final 2 months of her pregnancy, my wife was overwhelmed with anxiety about giving birth. As her due date approached, she became so distressed that she couldn't even speak with her doctor without breaking down at the mere mention of labor. She seemed to be in denial, as if ignoring it would somehow make it go away. I tried to encourage her to see a therapist or at least talk to someone, but she shut me down every time, insisting she just wasn't ready. On the day she went into labor, she was clearly experiencing strong contractions, yet she kept insisting they were minor and refused to go to the hospital. My mother, her mother, both of our sisters, and I all tried to reason with her, but nothing seemed to get through. She was determined to stay home, even though she was obviously in active labor. At that point, my sister and I knew we had to step in. Throughout her pregnancy, my wife had been craving churros, so my sister casually mentioned she was going to pick up some, hoping this might coax her out of the house. My wife, eager for the distraction, agreed to go along. However, my sister and I had already decided we were taking her straight to the hospital. When she realized our plan, her face fell. She started to cry and panic in the car, but we knew it was the only way. Thankfully, everything went smoothly, and she delivered safely. Both she and the baby were healthy. It's been a few months, but my wife continues to bring up that day, throwing it in my face whenever we argue. Each time, I apologize and reassure her, explaining that I understood her fear and that my intentions were only for her safety and our babies. There was no ill will, yet she continues to paint me as if I had done something terrible. This time, when she brought it up again, I finally snapped. I told her that if she thinks she's helping our marriage by being this way, she's wrong. I told her that if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't hesitate, because in that moment, I couldn't trust her judgment for the safety of herself and our baby. I explained that I would no longer engage in this conversation unless she's willing to communicate in a constructive, healthy way. In response, she accused me of dismissing and stonewalling her, calling me an a-hole for standing firm on wanting productive communication. I don't respond well to name-calling, especially since I've never spoken to her or anyone in that way. My frustration boiled over and I ended up saying something I now regret. Talk to me in that tone again and you'll be a single mom real quick. She hasn't stopped crying since. I feel terrible because I know my words were harsh, but I felt like I needed to stand up for myself after months of being constantly berated. Now I'm questioning if I went too far, or if this was the only way to get through to her. Now for the top comments. If you still want to remain married, I suggest speaking to her healthcare provider and therapists, or reach out to service providers to see why she is acting this way. They also need to see a counselor. It's never a bad idea, but wife needs it yesterday. OP does not. Not the a-hole, but you have a bigger problem. She was putting herself and your baby at risk. She does not sound mentally sound. If she cannot see that still after all this time, you have a big problem that needs professional intervention. Yeah, for real. I can understand being upset at that time, especially since she was dealing with so much anxiety. I had panic attacks at the thought of giving birth when I was pregnant with my first. It's an absolute horrifying thought. She should be able to look at the situation now and understand that OP stepped up and made a hard choice to take matters into his own hands. He kept his wife and child safe. I'm really not sure what she thought was going to happen otherwise. Last story. Am I the a-hole for wanting to leave my husband after he blamed me for our baby's death and started treating me like an animal? 2 years ago, we lost our 8-month-old son to pneumonia. I was devastated, and the guilt and pain have never left me. I did everything I could for him. I took him to every appointment, gave him his medication, and followed all the doctor's orders. But even after all that, he didn't survive. I thought my husband and I would grieve together, but instead, he has spent these 2 years blaming me, constantly reminding me that a better mother wouldn't have let this happen. The worst part is how he treats me now. Since our son's death, he's turned cold and cruel, treating me like an animal. He's openly disrespectful, dismissive, and degrading, and he brings up our son's death at every opportunity to paint me as a failure. It hurts even more because he's taken this grief as a free pass to cheat on me, and I'm just expected to accept it. A few months ago, I saw him in the mall with another woman. They were walking together, laughing, and he looked happy. I confronted them both on the spot, hoping he'd at least feel some shame, but instead he got furious. He turned it around on me as saying I had no right to be upset when, according to him, I'm the reason he lost his son in the first place. He even told the woman I was unstable, and she looked at me with pity, like I was some kind of deranged ex. That moment felt like I hit rock bottom. Now I'm at a breaking point. I don't know if I can take any more of his abuse, accusations, or infidelity. But every time I consider leaving, I feel like he'll just tell everyone that I abandoned him and couldn't handle my supposed guilt. Some people in his family already think I'm the reason our son died, thanks to what he's been saying behind my back. It's like he set me up to look like a monster no matter what I do. Am I the a-hole for finally wanting to walk away from this marriage? Or am I selfish for even thinking of leaving him while he's still grieving, even if his grief has turned into resentment and cruelty toward me? Not the a-hole. He abandoned you 2 years ago. Filed for divorce stating the reason is abuse and infidelity. Tell everyone what happens behind closed doors. He is verbally and mentally abusing you. If it is your fault, then you should recognize that it's more his than anyone's. Did he drive your child to appointments? Of course he didn't. Did he do everything in his power like you? It seems not. I'm sorry for your loss, and I hope you can escape this POS so you can heal. He did abandon me emotionally long ago, but I've been clinging to the idea that we could somehow rebuild, even as he's torn me down. I needed to hear that it's okay to be honest about what's really happening, and that filing for divorce isn't a failure on my part. Your point about his lack of involvement really hit home. I realize I've been carrying the weight of this alone. He's purposely treating you like garbage so he can get rid of you, plus play the victim again for being abandoned. You know he's the victim no matter what you do, so you might as well leave and get your life back. I hope you can get some grief counseling. What he said and done is totally unhinged and unacceptable. Not the a-hole. No parent should have to endure the loss of a child, and it's heartbreaking that your husband has turned his grief into something so cruel and destructive. You did everything you could for your son, and no one has the right to blame you for his illness or his passing. The way your husband is treating you, using your son's death to manipulate, control, and degrade you, is abusive and completely unacceptable. You deserve support, compassion, and a chance to heal, not to be treated like this. Walking away from this toxic behavior is not selfish. It's an act of self-preservation. You have every right to prioritize your well-being and find a path to healing, even if that means leaving him. It's been incredibly hard, and sometimes I feel like I'm losing my mind trying to justify staying with someone who constantly twists my grief into something I should be ashamed of. I love my son with everything I had, and hearing someone else say I did my best helps more than you know. Part of me keeps hoping my husband will come around, but with everything he's done and said, I'm realizing that his pain doesn't excuse his cruelty. Your words make me feel a little less alone and a bit more justified in thinking about leaving and focusing on my own healing.